The Mayan gods. You remember when people across the planet went insane and thought the world was gonna end in 2012? That was weird, wasn't it? But just how powerful are the Mayan gods? And will I ever grow up and finally stop talking about power levels? Let's find out. But first, introductions are in order because I will boldly assume you are not familiar with this pantheon. Zumukane and Zipiako. Actually, that's not how you pronounce those names. No one cares, pronunciation nerd. But speaking of pronunciations, well, first of all, I don't actually know how to pronounce any of these names. But also, I have decided to purposely pronounce this word as Zipiako without the last C at the end. This is because I don't want the YouTube algorithm to think that I am saying a word that I am not. Anyways, back to introductions. Zumukane and Zipiako, the creators of the Mayan cosmos. Huracan, the heart of sky. Hunapu and Sabalanque, the gods of the sun and the moon. And finally, last but not least, Kukulkan, the Mayan equivalent of Quetzalcoatl. These are the deities I will be power scaling in this video, but obviously they are not the only Mayan gods. With that said, we could begin with the scaling right now, but how about a little story first? In the beginning, there was a still sea, completely motionless and inert. In it lived two beings of pure light who were surrounded by feathers. Together, they are sometimes called Kukumats, but separately, their names are Sumukane and Zipiako. Above the sea, there was a dark and silent sky, and there lived three deities who are always treated as one. They are called Heart of Sky, although for this video, we will use a simpler name and call them Huracan. One day, or I guess no day at all since time didn't exist yet, Huracan descends to where Zumukane and Zipiako are, and he's like, "Hey, you know how there's nothing? Well, what if, hear me out, there was stuff?" And Zumukane and Zipiako are like, "Holy crap, that's genius!" And so, the universe is made. After everything is made, the gods realize that there is a massive flaw in their plan, because there is nobody there to worship them yet. And the Mayan gods need worship. And so, realizing that they need humanity, the three gods attempt to create them, and then they fail to create humanity. They failed 3 times. Once humanity is made, the god Kukulkan leads the chosen people, the Mayans, and helps them create civilization. And after many trials and tribulations, the Mayans finally establish a mighty and unconquerable empire where nothing ever goes wrong and the people live in eternal bliss and happiness forever and ever. What's that? We have new visitors from a land called Spain. Well, I sure nothing bad happens. Alright, let's power scale them now. First, let's talk commonalities. These are things that all the Mayan gods can do. The biggest thing about this pantheon is their ability to give and take away power. They can, for example, make inanimate things become sapient, and then the gods can give them enough power to perform supernatural feats. They also have power null. The Mayan gods can disable your powers permanently. In addition, the Mayan gods can change anything that already exists into something else, including themselves. They also can manipulate the weather and conjure earthquakes on a planetary scale, drop a meteor on you, and instantly kill you. In addition, they have precognition, they can know the future, they have healing powers, and can resurrect the dead. Lastly, if a Mayan god dies, they come back to life. However, this resurrection is not instantaneous, it takes time. And that's it, and just as a reminder, everything I have said so far is the basic package. All of this is what you get just by being a Mayan god. Now we could get into specifics, but before we do that, let's talk about weaknesses, because they sort of have some. First of all, the Mayan gods can be killed. They are not immortal, except for one of them. However, as mentioned before, even if a Mayan god dies, they can come back to life. But they only can do this if they have worshippers. This is why the Mayan gods made humanity. And their final weakness, the Mayan gods cannot go against fate. Even though they know what's going to happen, they cannot change it. Alright, with all the general stuff out of the way, we can now talk about the power level of each of the gods previously introduced. Let's begin with Sumukane and Zipiako. Determining their power is easy, really. At minimum, they are universal beings, because they have enough power to create a universe. In addition, they are allegedly omniscient, and perhaps there is some truth to this, because when Sumukane and Zipiako made humans, they gave humanity the ability to see everything, and because humans could see everything, they knew everything. The gods then changed their mind, because this makes humans a bit too powerful, but still, Sumukane and Zipiako just gave this power to all of humanity. So this can be used to prove that not only are Sumukane and Zipiako omniscient, but they can give omniscience to others if they want to. However, let's not forget that they failed to make humanity 3 times. That kinda disqualifies them for being omniscient. So, are they really? I leave this up to you. Also, Sumukane and Zipiako are not exempt from the passage of time. They get old, and like almost every other Mayan god, they can die. Lastly, before we move on to the next god, Xumucani and Xipiaco are the ultimate source of creation in Mayan myth. This means that everything in Mayan mythology ultimately comes from them. Well, everything except Huracan, because Huracan existed at the same time as them, but everything else, including every Mayan god, ultimately comes from Xumucani and Xipiaco. So Xumucani and Xipiaco should be more powerful than every other being I will talk about in this video. Alright, now let's move on to Huracan. First, let's get the big thing out of the way. What I'm about to say is based on my interpretation of the mythology. So if you want to dismiss this as headcanon, that's totally fine, but hear me out. It was until Huracan decided to speak with Xumucani and Xipiaco that things could be made. If you think about it, perhaps it could be argued that Huracan is introducing concepts, and once concepts are made, Xumucani and Xipiaco create the physical form of that concept. This can be supported by a story in which the concept of legacy is introduced into the world by the will of Huracan. If we accept that Huracan can really create concepts, he would be unbelievably powerful. But I have to admit this is shaky at best, so if you're not convinced, totally fine. Nonetheless, Huracan should still be very strong. Minimum, he should be as powerful as Xumucani and Xipiaco, because he helped them create the universe and he is equally as primordial as them. But maybe he is the superior god. He is certainly treated as such, he is given more reverence. And notice that from the very beginning, Huracan has always existed above Xumucani and Xipiaco. Also, and I believe this is very telling, Huracan is the only Mayan god that never dies. And not only that, but he never ages, he's never been hurt or challenged, and he can even order around other Mayan gods, including Xipiaco. So while the text do not explicitly tells us that Huracan is the strongest, it can be inferred that he is. In addition, he has a pet falcon which he uses as a messenger. It is said that this falcon can traverse any distance instantaneously. And lastly, after Xumucani and Xipiaco regret giving humans super enhanced vision, it is Huracan who takes away that power. This is a very good feat for Huracan because humans went from, at bare minimum, being capable of seeing the entire universe at once to having regular vision. That's a huge loss in power, and Huracan took away all of this power casually. Alright, now let's move on to Hunahpu and Xbalanque. So they are siblings, brother and sister. Hunahpu is male and the god of the sun, and Xbalanque is female and goddess of the moon. Now, they are always treated as equal, one is never portrayed as being superior to the other, so they should be equally as powerful. And since Hunahpu is supposed to literally be the sun, then at bare minimum, Hunahpu and Xbalanque should be both as powerful as a star. However, it can be argued that they are a lot more powerful, because there is this guy called Zipacna, and he once hit 400 people so hard, he turned them into a constellation. Now let's sidetrack here just for a moment. Both the Mayans and the Aztec believe that the stars in the night sky used to be 400 guys. The Mayans believe that these 400 guys were humans. The Aztecs believe that they were gods. Regardless, the number is always 400. This is because the number 400, well, the number 4 really, was used as an idiom for totality or infinity. So at bare minimum, depending on the story, these 400 guys, let's call them the 400 brothers, they are turned into a constellation. That's at a low end. At a high end, the 400 brothers are turned into all the stars in the universe. And if you really want to wank it, the 400 brothers are turned into an infinite amount of stars. With that explained, back on track, Zipacna hits the 400 brothers so hard that at minimum, he turns them into the constellation of the Pleiades. Now, what does this have to do with Hunahpu and Xbalanque? Well, Zipacna's father is called Bukupkakix. At minimum, Bukupkakix should be as powerful as his son, and there is this one story where Hunahpu hits Bukupkakix really hard and destroys his jaw. Hunahpu and Xbalanque should be equal in power, so all of this means that Hunahpu and Xbalanque are around as powerful as the guy who should be around as powerful as the guy who can hit you so hard he turns you into a constellation. Is this a very roundabout way to get there? Absolutely. And if you want to cast doubt on this, when Hunahpu hits Bukupkakix and breaks his jaw, Bukupkakix doesn't know that Hunahpu is there. Hunahpu was hiding. You could argue that Bukupkakix was not ready to get hit, and that's why he gets hurt. But even if we ignore Bukupkakix and Zipacna, Hunahpu and Xbalanque should still be very powerful because of what they did in the underworld. The Mayan underworld is called Xibalba, and it is ruled by 12 beings called the Lords of Xibalba. The lords that are relevant for this video are the Lord of Starvation, who can reduce you to bones, and the Lord of Sudden Death, who can instantly kill you. When Hunahpu and Xbalanque show up in Xibalba and declare they are going to kill everyone there, the Lords of Xibalba fall to their knees and beg for mercy because they are powerless to stop Hunahpu and Xbalanque. In my opinion, this is better than being stronger than Zipacna. And that's it really, that's all the juicy stuff for Hunahpu and Xbalanque. But there are other minor things we can go over. Hunahpu and Xbalanque are either immune to cold or very resistant to it. They are also resistant to fire and can make their own fire and control it in a very precise way. The weapons they use are blowguns, and they can shrink and go inside their weapons. They also can ride their weapons and fly with them. And Hunahpu and Xabalanque are so strong that just by blowing air through their weapons, they can knock out birds from the sky. Speaking of strength, Hunahpu and Xabalanque are the reason why deers and rabbits have short tails. And once they burned the tail of a rat, and that's why rats have no fur on their tails. Actually, no one cares, animals nerd. Now, here's something a bit more interesting. When Hunahpu, who is the sun, was ascending to space from Xibalba, his light illuminated the entire planet as he passed by.
Actually, if the real sun was on Earth, he will disintegrate the planet.
No one cares, science nerd. Also, as Hunahpu was passing by, he evaporated all the water in the world.
Actually, if there's no water, everyone would die.
No one cares, hydration nerd. What these two feats show is that Hunahpu can affect entire planets with his mere presence. In fact, his presence alone is so powerful that as he was ascending, his light momentarily turned the god Kukulkan into stone. Kukulkan is fine later in case you are curious. But the really cool thing about Hunahpu is that it was believed that what you see today in the sky is not actually Hunahpu, but merely a reflection of him, because it was believed his real self would be too powerful to ever be beheld. And finally, before Hunahpu and Xabalanque ascended into space, they turned the 400 brothers into all the stars in the universe. Oh, one more tiny thing. Once Hunahpu and Xabalanque take their place as the sun and the moon, it is said that they place themselves physically above Sumucane and Sipiaco. And while this does not necessarily mean that Hunahpu and Xabalanque are more powerful than Sumucane and Sipiaco, just because of this, that is an argument that you can make. Alright, now we can move on to the final god for this video, Kukulkan. So, Quetzalcoatl is an Aztec god. The Mayan equivalent is Kukulkan, but essentially they are the same deity under a different name, and that is one of the many reasons why originally I was going to mix Aztec and Mayan sources, but at the last minute I decided against it, because if I would have done that, the comment section for this video would be full of history nerds telling me,
actually, the Aztecs and the Mayans are different.
And yes, that is true, they were different. Also, no one cares, history nerd, but yes, they were different, and if this was a video about history, making that distinction would be important, but this is a video about power levels. There is nothing wrong with mixing Maya and Aztec sources to power scale their pantheons. Their gods can easily be syncretized, and that would have made the pantheon more powerful, which would make for a more interesting video. But I didn't do that because history nerds. So since I'm keeping this video strictly Maya only, there really isn't much to say about Kukulkan, but here's what I have for you. Kukulkan, like almost all mythological gods, goes by many names, including Tohil and Naxit. He was believed to be the ruler of a mythical city called Tolan, and he is credited with helping the Mayans build their civilization. Also, presumably, he invented fire, and according to Maya myth, he is the reason why all languages exist. As for powers, unknown, but the pecking order is clear. He is below Hunahpu and Xabalanque because he cannot even withstand seeing Hunahpu, and this automatically makes him weaker than Sumucane, Sipiaco, and Huracan. So Kukulkan would be the weakest god in this video, but don't take him lightly. He is still a Mayan god. He has all the general powers I mentioned way earlier in the video, and that alone makes him really strong. That's it, we are done with this video, but we are not done with the Mesoamerican gods. Come back next time and we will analyze the other side of the coin as we power scale the Aztec gods. Unless you are watching this video in the future, because if you are, then you can find a link to that video in the description. But before we go, conclusion time. So, how powerful are the Mayan gods? Well, the correct answer is no one cares, mythology nerd, but also the short answer is this. Power null, the ability to turn off the powers of your opponent. That's a very strong ability to have. A lot of fictional characters, and certainly the most mainstream ones, they do not have a counter to power null. You turn off the powers of Goku, and you can beat Goku with a rock and a stick. Power null beats a lot of characters. Power null is a very strong ability to have, and the Mayan gods have it. So if you want to put a Mayan god against any fictional character in a versus matchup, you must first answer this question. If that character gets their powers turned off, and then they get hit with an attack that at bare minimum can affect an entire planet, does the character die? If the answer to that question is yes, the Mayan god wins by default. That is how powerful the Mayan gods are. With that said, that's all I have for you for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the Aztec gods video.